Hi, everyone. Welcome. We are going to get started. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Ellie Wilson. I'm the State Director for Environment Virginia Research and Policy Center, and I'll be the facilitator for this briefing on seabed mining off of Virginia's coast. Environment Virginia Research and Policy Center is the state affiliate with Environment America Research and Policy Center, and our mission is really simple. It's to protect our natural world. And the many wonders and benefits of our natural world can really be found in our oceans and along our coasts. We work for solutions to the most pressing environmental problems through research, education, and grassroots organizing and advocacy. And this is a really important topic that I'm really happy that you were able to join us to learn about. I want to thank you all for joining us for Our Coast is at Risk, what Virginia seabed mining project could do to our ocean. And I'm joined behind the scenes by Kelsey Lamp, who is with Environment America as our Oceans Campaign Director, and as well as a really wonderful panel of experts who will be sharing their expertise on this project and how we can make a difference in ensuring that these types of projects don't move forward off Virginia's coast or along any of our coasts across or along the Atlantic. Virginia's coastline hosts incredible wildlife, vibrant ecosystems, and coastal communities really rely on a healthy ocean. In June, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management announced it was considering a proposal to mine off of Virginia's eastern shore, which could destroy seafloor habitats, impact migratory species like whales, sea turtles, fish, and release pollutants trapped in the seafloor. So if this mining moves forward, heavy machinery will plow through vast swaths of our seabed, breaking up sand and sediment and vacuum them to large ships. So this would damage a lot of our ocean environment, which we'll learn a lot more about in a little bit. So anybody who really cares about this issue has until August 22nd, so 10 days to make a comment on it. So that's why we wanted to provide this briefing to folks here in Virginia, but then also our region and our coastline, because we do know that a regional approach to opposing this type of project is something that is extremely effective, and we've done it before. So we want to thank everyone for being here today. And with that, we can go to the next slide. So we'll be hearing again from our great panel of experts, and we'll learn about the Virginia Coast Reserve, the threats of heavy mineral sand mining, and then what this leasing and comment process is like. And we'll also talk about local opposition and then ways for you to get involved. You can also ask questions throughout this webinar using our Q&A feature. We'll do our best to answer them all at the end, so please keep them coming throughout. And if we're unable to get to your question, we'll do our best to follow up afterwards. So you can go to the next slide. And so with that, I'm going to pass it over to our first panelist, Jill Bieri with the Nature Conservancy.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the opportunity to be here and share a little bit about a very special place on Earth, the Virginia Coast Reserve. And I am the director of the Virginia Coast Reserve for the Nature Conservancy. And I hope in the 10 minutes that I have, I will leave you with at least three important messages. The first, that the Virginia Coast Reserve is an incredibly special coastal ecosystem that has been protected and conserved for almost 60 years. I also want to talk about how the Virginia Coast Reserve is a place where extensive and critically important coastal research has been and continues to be conducted. And probably most importantly, I want to share everyone who lives and works on the Eastern Shore of Virginia has a connection to nature. Livelihoods and our culture of the 45,000 people, residents of these two counties, are just intimately tied to the natural areas. And so we'll talk about that. Next slide, please. So almost 60 years ago, 56 years ago in 1970, the Nature Conservancy with supporters and partners had the foresight to begin protecting an entire coastal barrier island ecosystem. This intact coastal system now encompasses 18 barrier and marsh islands that are practically undeveloped. Once the protection of the barrier islands was in place, we focused on broadening that protection to include the southern portion of the Delmarva Peninsula, the nearshore marine system, and the shoals of the mainland's bayside. So, really, the Virginia Coast Reserve encompasses the entire eastern shore of Virginia. We're recognized as a region included in the UNESCO Man in the Biosphere Reserve, one of only 800 special places in the world. In total, there's 133,000 acres protected on this 75-mile long coastline, 40,000 of that owned and managed by the Nature Conservancy. So, really, the largest expanse of coastal wilderness along the East Coast. Next slide. And the Virginia Coast Reserve consists of many different ecosystems within the ecosystem. Barrier islands, next slide. Extensive mudflats, next slide. Tidal marshes, forested uplands, freshwater non-tidal marshes, farm fields and agriculture. And just to say, farming is one of the main economic drivers of the Eastern Shore of Virginia. Next slide. Along with commercial fishing and aquaculture. And you can click, I think it's twice again. So the shellfish aquaculture industry, so oysters and clams, are a mainstay here and a huge economic driver, with shellfish aquaculture providing about $500 million a year annually to the economy of the Eastern Shore. You can click again, I think. And of course, shellfish aquaculture depends on really good water quality. Next slide. The Virginia Coast Reserve is really important for migratory species of birds. Next slide. For fish, for seals, and many, many other species, as we all know. Next slide. And the special rural communities on the seaside and bayside of the Eastern Shore of Virginia really take pride in their connection to the nature here. And that's socially, it's culturally, and it's hugely economically. Next slide. The foresight to protect this coastal system has led to really nearly pristine water quality in these coastal lagoons, these coastal bays on the seaside of the Eastern Shore. And that in turn provides an amazing place to successfully experiment with restoration as well as other research. It's also here where we can demonstrate how this intact natural system is really responding to the impacts of climate change with not a lot of human impact. So it's been really, really important as a place where the National Science Foundation established a long-term ecological research program in the mid-1980s. So that continues today. So we have decades of data and models demonstrating how all these natural systems that are intact along the Virginia Coast Reserve are providing resilience and adapting to those climate impacts. Hundreds of graduate students and scientists have contributed to this body of work over the past 4 decades. And really, the University of Virginia and this long-term ecological research program continues to be one of the most important partners in this landscape. Next slide. For over 50 years, we've worked hand in hand with state and federal and academic partners to effectively protect and manage migratory bird habitats and populations at both our local level and at regional scales. We've played and continue to play an integral role in developing, prioritizing, and implementing research that has really uncovered critical information to ensuring the survival of many bird species of concern, including the American oystercatcher, the piping plover, the skimmer, and many other species. Next slide. The Virginia Coast Reserve provides many migratory bird species refuge, foraging spaces, breeding and nesting habitats in certain times of the year. It really is one of the world's most important systems in the Western Hemisphere, and as such is recognized as part of WISRN, the Western Hemisphere Shorebird Reserve Network, as well as holds an Audubon globally important bird area designation. Next slide. Specific work in capturing and tagging birds occurs at the Virginia Coast Reserve and has for many, many years to enhance our learning in this living laboratory. And new tagging technology is providing real-time and cellular data to help better inform details about long-distance migratory populations of shorebirds. So you can see how important in these long-term migratory pathways the Virginia Coast Reserve is for many birds that stop here to forage on their long flights north and south. Next slide. So moving on to just talking about the amazing water quality at the Virginia Coast Reserve, in part due to because of all the protection around these coastal bays. It has provided a place where we have the largest seagrass restoration in the world. So the seagrass we have here is eelgrass. It all but disappeared in the 1930s due to a wasting disease, and researchers from the Virginia Institute for Marine Science began the successful restoration in the late 1990s, and now we have nearly 12,000 acres restored. The scale of this project is pretty unbelievable and continues to alter the lower bay ecosystem in so many positive ways. Next slide. The scale of success of the eelgrass restoration has provided conditions allowing successful reintroduction of the bay scallop, which also disappeared with the eelgrass in the 1930s. And again, the Virginia Institute of Marine Science leads this effort, and the success is now approaching levels that could possibly sustain a recreational fishery. So really important, this seagrass bed. Next slide. There's just so many other additional ecosystem benefits that 12,000 acres and expanding are associated with. And that includes huge increases in the abundance of invertebrates, the increase in finfish, biodiversity, as well as return of waterfowl that feed on the grass, such as brant. Next slide, click. I think it's a who doesn't love a seahorse? It's providing such amazing habitat in these underwater forests. In addition, actually, we'll go back. In addition, thousands of tons of carbon are sequestered by these vast restored meadows, and more carbon is captured each year as the restoration expands. So, a great ecosystem benefit of such a large restoration. And the extensive research that we've talked about that are occurring in these beds includes developing a seagrass blue carbon methodology. We're using that methodology to implement here at the Virginia Coast Reserve the world's first ever blue carbon seagrass market project in partnership with the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we're on track to have those first credits for sale on the voluntary market within the next year. Next slide. So the Virginia Coast Reserve is acting as this living laboratory. We've talked about migratory species, we've talked about restoration of eelgrass, and it is also a living laboratory for coastal resilience and for nature-based solutions. Next slide. We've been involved in successful oyster restoration for ecological benefits, so filter feeders that are helping to further increase water clarity, provide habitat, and of course, the oysters become a source of food from commercial harvesting. And in the last 10 to 15 years, with our partners, we've been using oyster restoration for resilience. So placing oyster habitat along marsh shorelines, maybe eroding marsh shorelines to protect those extensive marshes and those marsh islands that in turn can serve as protection for our local communities. Really, the natural protected system of the Virginia Coast Reserve in total it serves as a living laboratory for nature-based solutions, from the barrier islands to the restored habitats to the fringing marshes and the peninsula that we call the Eastern Shore. Next slide. And the last slide. It's difficult. I hope the pictures help, the photos help to explain the scale and the scope and the success and the just really amazing habitat and ecosystem that the Virginia Coast Reserve is. But a glimpse into it maybe will serve to help this effort in making sure that we protect this very special area. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jill. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Megan Wynn, with the Southern Environmental Law Center.
Thanks, Ellie, and thanks, Jill. And good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Megan Wynn, and appreciate the opportunity to be here today and appreciate you being here with us to learn more about seabed mining. Jill did a really good job of highlighting the resources that are at risk here and why the Virginia coast is so special. I'm going to talk about some of these risks themselves, and you can go ahead to the next slide. I'm going to start with a short overview of what exactly it is that we're talking about when we say seabed mining in this context, and then I'll cover some of the science around what those impacts may be. So first, what exactly is it that's being proposed here? So as Ellie mentioned, in June, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, or BOEM, issued what is called a request for information and interest about mineral leasing in federal waters off the eastern shore. This was done at the request of a Florida company called Odyssey Marine, and we'll talk a little bit more about that process in just a few minutes. But right now I want to focus on the actual proposal. So Odyssey has indicated that it is interested in mining heavy mineral sands and phosphates in this area. So we have not seen a sediment study here, but typically the primary product derived from heavy mineral sands on the Atlantic coastal plain, we see a lot of these mines terrestrially, is something called titanium dioxide. Now, titanium dioxide is not typically used in the way that we think of when we may think of titanium. It is typically used to make white pigment. So it whitens things like paint and paper and plastic. The other target mineral that they list here, phosphates, is typically used for to manufacture fertilizer. So the proposed area that they are looking at mining here ranges in depth between about 30 and 400 feet deep. So not quite as deep as, or not as deep as a lot of the deep sea mining proposals that we hear about in the Pacific. But as we talk about mining this, I know one of the questions that we have heard is, what does mining at this depth look like? And I want to caveat this next part that I talk about by saying there's still a lot of unknowns here. Again, Odyssey has put in an application, but we don't know. This will be an open competitive leasing process. So there's still a lot of unknowns, but as far as Odyssey has indicated that at least for the heavy mineral sands mining, it would use something called hopper dredges. And these are large industrial machinery that are really designed to go in and break up and remove enormous amounts of sediment from the seafloor. And they use these, as you can see in this image, they use these vacuum-like suction attachments that can be incredibly damaging to ocean ecosystems. So put in the simplest terms, it is essentially like strip mining the ocean floor. And strip mining here, we're talking about more than 2,700 square miles. So as Ellie mentioned, an area larger than the state of Delaware. And one thing that we have heard proponents of this project say is that this is just like the dredging that has been done in our harbors or that is done to get sand for beach nourishment projects. And it may be the case that this will use some of the same equipment, but I cannot state strongly enough that this type of large scale commercial mining, what that is proposed here, would be drastically different in scale and also in duration. So we're talking about a lease that could run 2 decades, even more here. And so just to drive that home a little bit more, for comparison's sake, one of the comparisons here is nourishment sand dredging. All of the nourishment sand dredging that have been ever authorized by BOEM in U.S. waters under the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act, I think there's around 78 of them. Those together have allowed dredging over a total of 128 square miles. So that is not just talking about Virginia, that is not just talking about the Atlantic, that is all of the US projects ever. Here we're talking about more than 2,700 square miles for a single project off the coast of a single state. So it is not even close to comparable. And I will also say, as a side note, these dredging projects that occur even at much smaller scales can still be incredibly damaging to the ocean ecosystem. But we're talking about just a totally different scale here. Um, so keeping that in mind, I want to get into some of the specific concerns about how this could impact the ecosystem. And we can go to the next slide. So the first thing I want to talk about is wildlife. So the proposed lease area contains habitat and migratory corridors for a lot of Virginia's marine wildlife, including a number of federally protected species like the North Atlantic right whales that you see here in the picture, 4 species of sea turtles, Atlantic sturgeon, various other protected species. We also see bottlenose dolphins, fin whales, all sorts of different marine mammals. Jill talked a little bit about the birds that use this area and the coastal area. So all that to say, it's an incredibly biologically rich region. Mining does a few things for this, or threatens this in a few different ways. First, there's the physical disturbance. This is both direct injury from the mining equipment itself, and then also light and noise disturbance can lead to avoidance, changes in behavioral patterns. And then perhaps more concerningly, mining impacts the food web that these species rely on. So if you remember when I said this is like strip mining the ocean floor here, the benthic habitat is really the base of the food web for a lot of these marine species. And so it is, once you mess with the ocean floor, those impacts just cascade upwards up the food chain. And here, with a lot of these federally threatened and endangered species, we're talking about populations that are already under severe pressure. And so one of our big concerns is impacts on these species. And we can go to the next slide. The next thing I want to talk about, and this pairs well with the wildlife side, but I want to focus in on the fisheries impacts, because this is huge. As Jill mentioned, on the Virginia coast, each year you've got fishers landing hundreds of millions of pounds of fish and crab and oysters, clams, scallops. And in the same way that with the other wildlife we talked about, there's the potential impact to food sources and also to fish habitat within the mining footprint. Tearing up the bottom destroys shoals, sediment structures, artificial reefs, other areas where fish congregate. Also, as Jill touched on, mining the ocean floor threatens to release a lot of contaminants that have been bound up in those ocean floor sediments. Some of these are naturally occurring. Some of these are contaminants that have landed there and been bound up. So we're talking about heavy metals, radionuclides and radioactive material, other toxic contaminants. That is problematic for water quality that the Virginia coast depends on. Also problematic because it kind of, again, bioaccumulates in larger fish and kind of cascades up the food chain to both recreationally and economically important fish species. And then perhaps most concerningly here, as you're digging up the ocean floor, it disturbs all of that sediment. And when I say perhaps most concerningly here, part of that is because these sediment plumes are not contained to the mining footprint. And even here, where we're talking about a rather large mining footprint, these plumes can still travel, especially the finer grains in these plumes can travel significant distances and far beyond the mining footprint. You can go to the next slide. And this is in here, we've talked about the impacts to fisheries, but this is here just to highlight that these fisheries not just important from an ecological perspective, they're also one of the most economically important industries on the coast and in the Commonwealth. So commercial fishing on the Virginia coast supports more than 6,000 jobs on the water, generates over $1 billion for the state's GDP. And it is not just the commercial fishing. So recreational fishing supports hundreds of additional jobs and millions of dollars in economic activity. And we can go on to the next slide. So kind of the third bucket of potential impacts that I want to highlight today is potential impacts to coastal communities. And again, we still don't have a lot of information about the depth of mining. I mean, we know how deep the water would be, but not how deep into the sediment they would go or how much sediment may be removed. So I'll caveat this by saying there's still a lot of uncertainties here, but we are really concerned. Experts have raised concerns to us about how offshore mining could impact coastal communities. Um, in part by removing some of the ridges. The ocean floor is not flat the whole way through. There are important ridges and sediment structures. And these are really important for dissipating some of the storm wave energy as these storms come into the coast. And so as we look at storm surge and resilience issues, they're really important, and flattening out and eliminating those has potential problematic impacts for coastal communities. Also, we're talking about potentially reducing how much sediment gets transported from the seafloor to our shorelines. So again, from a resilience issue or from a resilience perspective and impacts to the coastal communities, this is something that we are particularly concerned about. There's also still questions out there about how and where these minerals would be processed. But we know in particular that phosphate processing can be really problematic and cause a lot of pollution, land pollution, groundwater, surface water, air, got toxic radioactive waste streams. So concerns also about what processing facilities could look like here. And we can go on to the next slide. So the last thing I want to touch on is potential defense and national security concerns. So as many of the folks on this call, especially the Virginians, probably know, the Virginia coast is home to the largest concentration of naval operations anywhere in the world. And then Wallops Flight Facility as well is just on the shore. So these waters off the Virginia coast and the waters near the potential lease area are used to support military training, submarine operations, air combat training, missile defense testing. So this map here just highlights some of the concerns about competing uses here. So you can see the proposed lease area, and this may be the first map we're showing of this. So I should have put one earlier in the presentation, but you can see the proposed lease area here outlined in black. And you can also probably see that it overlaps substantially with, and I think I am using the official term for the regulations here. This area highlighted in red is called a danger zone. And then you see the small yellow dots show areas with known unexploded ordnances. I don't know that it takes a lot of explanation to show why that is a bad idea to be mining in areas with unexploded ordnances. And then you can see all this purple on here. Those are all areas, and I don't know if you can quite see the key on this map, but those are all areas that the Department of Defense has said at various times are incompatible because of military uses with oil and gas activity. The areas with the in the lighter color purple are areas that they have said are incompatible for wind. So just a lot of compatibility concerns highlighted in other ocean proposals, and flagging that those are still here as well. And we can go on to the next slide. So I want to take just a minute or two to talk about where we are in the leasing process and kind of how this works. So as I mentioned, back in June, BOEM issued a request for information and interest at the request of Odyssey Marine, but this is part of a competitive leasing process. So one of the things that they are doing during this RFI period is trying to gauge whether there's interest from other companies in mining this area, but it's also an important opportunity for individuals, organizations, folks who live and work and fish on the Eastern Shore, also folks who live and work and fish throughout the rest of the Atlantic coast, because we have these minerals that are situated off the Virginia coast also run up and down the Atlantic. So we have concerns that this could just be a first step. So this is an opportunity for public comment. And as we have seen in some mining that is slightly in front of ours, this may well be the only opportunity for that BOEM is officially accepting public comment. So as Ellie mentioned earlier, we've got 10 days left on that comment period. The next step in this process will be the official identification of areas. After that, there will be some level of environmental analysis. We have made the argument and will continue to push for a full environmental impact statement here. Then we'll see a proposed leasing notice and eventually a leasing notice, and that will lead to a competitive lease sale. But I really wanted to flag on here, and Dylan will talk about some ways to get involved and help here, but really wanted to flag this public comment period. And and I just want to wrap up by focusing on the fact, this is my last slide, but this really is, I talked about it a little bit before when I talked about the scale of it, but did just really want to hone in on how unprecedented this really would be. If this leads to mining, and as you can see here, there's still additional steps, but particularly with the phosphate mining part of it, this would not just be the first marine phosphate mine in Virginia or in the Atlantic or the US. To our knowledge, there are no marine phosphate mines operating anywhere in the world, at least as of the end of 2025. And again, this is something that other countries have considered. There have been proposals in Mexico and New Zealand and Namibia, and they have all routinely rejected it as too environmentally harmful. And even with the heavy mineral sands mines, this would be among the first projects to do this type of marine mining at this scale. So it is, there's still a lot of questions out there. There are still a lot of unknowns out there. But we do know that this would be fairly unprecedented and that there is just too much at stake here on the Virginia coast and the Atlantic coast to risk. So with that, I will turn it back to Ellie and over to Dylan to talk more about how to get involved.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. And I think seeing Jill's slides and really feeling this place and then really hearing about these impacts, it really underscores just, what is at risk and, why we need to build opposition to this really unprecedented project. Not just here for Virginia, but so we can make sure that we starve off these along our entire coast. So with that, I will pass it over to Dylan to talk to us about local opposition and getting involved.
Great. And thank you all so much, Megan, Jill, Ellie, Kelsey, and then all of you who've decided to join the webinar today. Kudos to you. So I'm Dylan Mason. As Ellie mentioned, I'm the Public Policy Manager with Lynnhaven River Now, which is a environmental conservation and restoration organization based in Virginia Beach. And really what I want to hit on today are three things. Who are the stakeholders here regionally? What are they saying right now? And then what needs to be done next within, this next 10 days, which seems like a short period of time. But we've already had so many amazing voices on the record. So we're going to kind of run through all of that. We could go next. So I don't have as cool of pictures as Jill did, but we've got a few things here to highlight. We've got ponies on Assateague Island that are swimming during the Chincoteague Island annual pony swim. Sunset Marina in Ocean City, Maryland, which to our concerns, we believe that there could be, problems with sediment even moving up into the mid-Atlantic. And that is actually the place where the White Marlin Open is hosted each year, which actually was just last week. And then a photo of a rocket launch at Wallops, which is kind of what Megan hit on there. Big spot for sort of space tourism and military and national security, spaceport operations. But before I kind of dig into where we're at with stakeholder engagement, I want to touch on the fact that I'm actually originally from Chincoteague Island on the Eastern Shore. So growing up there, seeing how that community is really dependent on clean, healthy ecosystems and a robust fishery and tourism, was something that I has been a part of my life for forever. And then when this BOEM RFI was released, I'm well positioned here in Virginia Beach, working for an environmental organization to kind of bridge the two communities and really get out and talk with stakeholders, whether it's local governments and businesses, just to make that connection so genuine. Because, like I had mentioned, I'm from the shore. But we can hit the next slide now. So, kind of given that outreach, middle of the summer, really busy season for the Eastern Shore and all of these communities that are depending on tourism and fishing. And we have this RFI released, but sort of immediately we're getting responses from the counties of North Accomack or Northampton and Accomack County, really expressing concern and looking at, what action can they take within the first couple of weeks of the initial RFI 30-day period being open, to sort of raise questions and get their voices on the board. So it was really encouraging to see these communities be so proactive in the middle of a busy season, to learn and voice questions about this industry, as Megan had mentioned, that has never kind of reared its head anywhere in the country. So a lot of those outstanding questions were cause for concern to allow Northampton and Accomack to go on the record and oppose this project. We also saw the town of Chincoteague at the very top of the lease area go on record very early as well. City-wise, we're looking at Virginia Beach here, which is the largest city in the state of Virginia, was immediately very concerned about this process. And they were really concerned about the 30 days, like the initial period. Was not enough time, so we were given an additional 30 days. So within that 60 days of time, Virginia Beach is now going to be having a briefing next week to decide, whether they're going to formally oppose this project as well. You're also seeing outside of Virginia, Ocean City was out in front with opposition to. 30 miles roughly from Ocean City is where the northern end of this lease area sort of stops. Similar concerns to the rest of the Eastern Shore of Virginia, tourism, fisheries, just general environmental concerns regarding this proposal were really evident from the very beginning. Um, Next slide, please. So on the record, like so far, we're seeing a lot of these businesses, from all the way to Ocean City with their like angler shops and fishing bait and tackle to hotels, shellfish industries. Another giant sort of player in this area is Ocean Harvesters, which operates a menhaden reduction fishery. In the bay, but as well off of our coast, and they've actually identified around 60% of their catch occurs either in or directly outside of the proposed lease areas. So the level of economic exposure there led them to essentially comment, hey, we don't even know if we can provide any sort of recommendations as to how you could mitigate any sort of harms to the fishery posed by this dredging operation. Um, so the commercial fishing and recreational fishing side of things is evident. Looking at recreation, the Eastern Shore is home to a wide variety of sort of tourism industries, small family businesses. Charter boat captains are super, concerned about what does this operation look like? Are they going to take out, families that are visiting from other parts of the country and really not be able to fish in the way that they used to? So a lot of these concerns are being voiced just directly up front. Um, Also hitting on the maritime trade aspect, this is a really busy, area for shipping, and with the mouth of the bay and the port system here, we're expecting conflicting uses in that sort of realm too. And I think I missed on that last side, but the Virginia Spaceport Authority, which kind of operates the mid, yeah, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't see it on my screen. The Spaceport Authority has already submitted a letter of opposition as well, and that's a huge voice. They've for about 3 to 4 decades have been a massive sort of economic engine for the Eastern Shore, developing new like infrastructure at the Wallop Spaceport and operating the Mid-Atlantic Regional Space facility. So they're seeing like right now, without having to do any more sort of digging of their own, that like this is putting too much at stake. And growing up on the island again, like um, knowing when they have a launch, if there is even just one boat in that sort of danger zone, they cancel the launch. That is it, and then they'll have to reschedule. So you're talking about a lot of resources that go into, scheduling these launches of different types, and the sort of sensitivity that they require in order to be executed successfully. And it's also worth hitting on, since I couldn't see it originally, the Virginia Marine Resources Commission has also raised a serious number of concerns, just right up front as well. So they sort of stop short of opposing. That's not necessarily within their framework, but just raising these similar sort of concerns about damage to benthic communities and habitat, and looking at our shellfish and aquaculture and fisheries off of our coast here. If we could jump back. All right, so great. We're talking engagement. What can you do? You can obviously submit a comment directly to that reference docket, the BOEM 2026-0100 online, and that's an incredible way to get your voice as an individual, as a business, as an organization. I'm just out there in plain writing. So whenever BOEM is going through this period, following the RFI when it ends in 10 days, they're able to check all the boxes for different sort of people and stakeholders across the shore and even outside of Virginia, that are weighing in on this. There's also a number of sort of sign-on letters, commercial fishing letters, different petitions that are circulating. And I think we are going to have some QR codes at the end of this, but feel free to reach out to any of the hosts or facilitators or panelists here to provide some of those opportunities for really easy sign-on and engagement. Not everyone has the time to sit down and type out a comment, so we have letter templates available. Just making engagement, if you're so inclined, super, super easy and straightforward. And then lastly, political pressure. Calling, writing, emailing your local, state, and federal representatives, whether it's here locally in Virginia Beach, whether you want to write the governor's office, whether you want to write your senators, they need to hear from these communities now and even after this comment period ends, because we don't expect that this is something that's just going to go away immediately. We are going to have to sustain this pressure campaign, and continue to raise these questions that are, make us think about like we have all of these economic industries that are viable here already off of our coast and all of these conflicting uses. Why would we endanger those existing industries with a sort of unproven, untested industry where, our government and BOEM as an agency cannot point to a project that's happened somewhere else before and say, hey, look, we were able to do this in a way that mitigated harm to X, Y, and Z stakeholder. So those are the sort of three things that you can do. I'm happy to be a resource. If anyone has questions, my email is dylan@lrnow.org. Please reach out. The last thing I'll mention before I finish up here is I had the pleasure of going up to the shore for the past couple of days and really getting on the ground with folks at marinas, at bait and tackle shops, at local town halls and things like that. Just raising awareness and to continue to like beat the drum, so to speak, about this. And as impactful and as unprecedented as a proposal this really is, not everyone is aware of it. I would say it's about half. So please tell your networks, post about it on Facebook, Instagram, wherever you can, and just keep this awareness sort of raised to the highest level of degree. But I appreciate you all for joining. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dylan. And what a motivating way to end our presentations with our panel. I'm excited to have more people knowing about this now after today and have more people able to rise up in opposition to this project and this idea in general. It will, like you said, take this won't be the last battle. And so I think this is a great time that we mobilize now to really build the broad strategic regional support that we need in order to stop projects like this from destroying our ecosystems. So we will be sharing some QR codes on the next slide in just a minute. But I did want to open it up to some questions first. We've only gotten one in our chat so far. So if you'd like to ask any more, please use the Q&A feature, or you can send it in the chat and we'll be happy to do that or to answer that here in a minute. But the first question that we've gotten was, seems like there's plenty of terrestrial sources of titanium and phosphate in the US. Why are they interested in offshore sources? I'm wondering if anybody in our panel would have a good answer for that question.
I I can share. I don't have a good answer for that. We've seen there are terrestrial sources for these mines. In fact, some heavy mineral sands mines have closed down here. I am located in Georgia. Have closed down here in Georgia recently. So I think the availability of other sources, combined with the fact that there are terrestrial mines available, there's also new and exciting technology coming out relating to waste stream recycling, mining existing tailings, just a lot more low impact ways to get these resources. So I think that just fits in with what you've heard, I think, from all three of us up here, is that these risks just are not worth what's coming out, and the potential minerals that they would be getting.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. Well, why don't we go to our, oh no, wait, I saw some questions have come in. Sorry. Who is Odyssey? Is there more background, Megan, that you could provide on this company?
Sure. So Odyssey Marine started out as a shipwreck exploration company, and operated as a shipwreck exploration company for a long time. They have kind of turned their sights on seabed mining. As far as I know, they don't have any operational seabed mines. They have tried to propose a facility that would be or a phosphate mine down off the coast of Mexico, but that project, the Mexico denied permission for that project to go forward based on potential environmental impacts. And I believe right now they are also seeking to merge with another deep sea mining company, and that currently is in the works.
Awesome. Thank you. And then one other question was, would you be able to email us a brief list of points to touch on in our public comment? Yes, we will. We will follow up with all the materials we possibly can provide you after this webinar so that you can make personal comments with some really great information in there, as well as different templates for signing on and petitions and things like that. So we will be sure to share as much as we can in that follow-up email for you all. And why don't we go to the next slide? Because I think then this actually somewhat talks about something else that came up in the questions, and it was about offshore wind. And offshore drilling is another aspect that people talk a lot about. And I want to point to offshore drilling as just a really great example of what we have done in the past in order to build support regionally and all along our coast to oppose offshore drilling. Virginia has effectively been able to ban offshore drilling in our state waters, making it very difficult for any offshore drilling to happen in our federal waters. This type of mining is different. It has different equipment, so you don't have the piping and things like that. So we're not able to necessarily use that exact strategy moving forward, but we have time and time again been able to stop drilling off the coast by showing this broad support. And so that's why this is just so critical that we not only are fighting this lease, but we're showing broadly that we are in opposition to destroying our coastal habitats. And so we do have here the petitions that you can go to, as well as a toolkit at those links where we have all the different sign-on letters that if you are a local official, if you're a legislator, if you're a business owner, with fisheries, we have all sorts of different materials based on all the different types of voices that we are trying to organize to speak up on this issue. And then I do also want to, you don't have to be an expert to comment. I think that's also something that's really important. You don't have to own a fishery. You don't have to, be in the military or anything like that. Obviously, those great voices are great, and we are trying to raise those up. But if you enjoy going to the beaches, we know thousands and thousands of people do every summer, flock to our shores. Here in Virginia, in North Carolina, Maryland, really across this whole region. We know people from all over the country love our shore. And so this is just a really great opportunity to get people involved to raise up their voices for our oceans. People recognize the importance of these special places. And we hope that with the information we've provided for you today and the tools that we've put together for you, that you feel empowered to whatever your voice is, make it heard in this process and beyond. This is unprecedented. And so we need an unprecedented, broad opposition. And we are here as resources to help you make that as easy as possible. So with the next slide, I have my contact information. Feel free to get in touch with me if you have any questions about this. And I also included Kelsey Lamp, who has been running our slides here today, who is our Oceans Campaign Director with Environment America. In that follow-up email, though, we will include our other panelists' contact information so you can reach out to them if you have questions about any of the stuff that they covered. But I want to say thank you all so much again for being here today and learning about this issue. And I'm really excited to see what a big difference every one of you is going to make on this issue. So with that, I will let you all go. Thank you.